On today's show, we're talking about Adolis Garcia looking for more than a bounce back season, and my spring training bingo card. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're talking about Adolis Garcia's bold expectations for himself after a career worst year. We're going to talk about some injured players who are no longer injured, and I'm going to talk about my spring training bingo card, what to watch for when you're watching spring training games to bring in the casuals and also have a little bit of extra fun for you diehards out there. But let's get into the first things first. Adolis Garcia, talking with the media yesterday. Adolis is one of the guys who I've talked, I think, the least about this offseason because, well, there's not that much to talk about from last year. It was just bad. It was really bad. It was one of the worst drop-offs. It's tough between him and Jonah Heim. It's hard to say who had a worse fall-off from 2023 to 2024. Adolis Garcia was allegedly healthy for the full year. He played 154 games. I mean, the second most he's played in his career, behind only 156, which he played in 2022. But he was just bad. A career worst in terms of his batting average, his on-base percentage, his slugging percentage, his home runs in a season, RBIs in a season. I mean, it was just, no matter where you look on Adolis Garcia's stat card from last year, it was just not good. You want to look at the advanced stats too. You want to look at, StatCast numbers, and they painted an even uglier picture from his season last year. But Adolis Garcia is not deterred. He does not think he is done, despite so many analytical models just saying, oh, well, this guy had a nice couple of years, but this was all fake. He was always bad. There's no way he's going to bounce back to being anywhere near what he was in 2023. And I've always pushed back on that. I don't know that Adolis Garcia is going to meet the lofty expectations he was talking about in spring training, where a lot of guys, if you asked them for concrete numbers, concrete things that they're expecting from themselves, that they're usually not as forthcoming with answers as Adolis Garcia was. But he said, I want 50 home runs this year. I want it. Now, his career high is 39 home runs. You add in the 8 from the postseason in 2023, and that gives him 47 home runs. Still not even to 50. That was in 163 games, if you add in those 15 postseason games that Adolis Garcia played in last year. That's some lofty goals. And why does he think he can achieve them? Well, for the first time in several years, the last couple of years, Adolis Garcia has been dealing with knee pain. And not just a little bit of pain, but apparently a whole bunch of pain. I know that collision with Marcus Semien had an impact on him last year. I mean, it's easy to look at his numbers and just think, oh, Adolis Garcia was completely terrible for the entire year, that there was nothing good about it whatsoever. And that's just not true. There were some really rough stretches, for sure. The month of May, when he had a 544 OPS in 25 games, was not good. When he was bad in June, when he had a 504 OPS in 24 games in July, that looked like the bottom of the barrel. I mean, he was hitting under 200 for most months of the season last year. But the start he got off to was just wild. 8 home runs, a 932 OPS in 29 games in April and March. 8 home runs in that span, 4 stolen bases. I mean, he looked as good as ever. He was hitting nearly 300 for that month, on base just a couple points shy of 350. I mean, this guy was crushing it. And then just really fell off a cliff, and a lot of that had to do with his swing, with his bat speed that fell off a little bit last year. He's got one of the longer swings in baseball. It takes him a while to get to the ball. And when your bat speed falls off, which happens when you get older, you get a little bit less strong, a little bit less spry. Those two things are a terrifying combination, and a big part of why he really fell off last year. I mean, it takes him longer to get to the baseball, and when he decides that he needs to swing, you need to make that swing decision a whole lot faster, so you have less time to process information, so you end up expanding the zone a little bit more. You have to make your decision of, am I going to swing or not swing, and where am I going to swing a lot earlier if your bat is taking longer to get through the zone, and if your bat is even slower, that just adds on time exponentially. And so he's worked on cutting down that swing this offseason. He's worked on adding back bat speed. He's also slimmed down quite a bit. And I think that is going to be something that is going to help him a lot this year. Because, I mean, when you look at a lot of baseball players, for the most part, they're not jacked. They're not built like Adonis or his brother, Adolis Garcia. Adolis is. He is one of the more ripped players in baseball, but that's not always necessarily a good thing. You need a little bit more cushion for the pushing, and by pushing, I mean pushing through a 162-game season. You just need that little bit of fat there, just a little bit. And having that extra bulk, it usually leads to some injury problems. I mean, maybe this is just anecdotal, but I mean, you think about the most ripped guys in the game. The fact that Adolis has been able to stay healthy and on the field as long as he has, while being that absolutely jacked, so jacked that Astros fans are still complaining about him allegedly taking steroids, despite not looking over at the big monster on their own team in Yordan Alvarez. And you know, Astros fans are pretty familiar with cheating allegations. But Adolis Garcia is built like a Giancarlo Stanton, like a Yordan Alvarez, like a Mike Trout. Those three guys, they are built like statues. And they have not been the peak of durability, even less so than Adolis Garcia. I think that this will definitely add to his sprint speed, add to hopefully him being better in the outfield defensively. I mean, in 2023, he won a Gold Glove. And last year, you looked at his fielding run value, the overall value of his defense, it was in the bottom 3% of baseball, negative 10 runs. He was really bad defensively last year, just a year after winning a Gold Glove. Now, the arm strength was still there, but the decisions, the jumps he was getting in the outfield, the sprint speed was in the bottom 30. There was the 36th percentile in baseball, below average. He just kept falling off sprint speed wise. He has quite a bit the last couple of years. Last year he was about league average of sprint speed. The year before that he was in the top third of baseball in terms of his sprint speed in 2022. He's a much better base runner then. He stole just 11 bases last year, and he's hoping to get somewhere between 30 and 40 stolen bases this year. I mean, Adolis Garcia isn't just eyeing a bounce back. He is eyeing a career season, goals he has not gotten even close to in his big league career. At age 32, a guy who didn't become major league regular until 28. This is bold. I love it, though. That is very Adolis. I mean, he was such a spark plug on this team in 2023. And for him to be his loud, boisterous, best self that's out there slamming the baseball bat, getting in the heads and the hearts and the minds of opposing players to the point where they're saying that it's the worst thing that Adolis Garcia ever did to wake them up. And then he put them back to sleep for a little nappy poo in the ALCS. And Martin Maldonado is now a member of, I believe, the Padres. I mean, who knows where the heck that guy ended up. But Adolis Garcia is such a linchpin in this offense. If he can get back to anywhere near what he did, even just in 2023, not getting 50 home runs, not setting that expectation for him. I mean, that's a lofty goal. I love that that's his goal, though. 100 RBIs, that feels like chalk. If he's putting up the offensive numbers that we're expecting from him, that should be easy with the rate that this offense is going to get on base and get into scoring position ahead of him. Whether he's hitting fourth, whether he's hitting fifth, or whether he's hitting sixth, I don't imagine he'll hit much lower than fourth or fifth. I mean, depending on who's humming in this offense, who knows what this offense is going to look like. But I know that it looks a lot better with Adolis Garcia at the peak of his powers, because elite offenses, they got two things. They got depth. They've got no easy outs in the lineup. That's what good offenses have, and the Rangers right now have that. I mean, the ninth place hitter is probably going to be either Jonah Heim or Evan Carter, and neither of those guys are easy outs. Those are good hitters. One of them's an all-star, and one of them has the potential to be an all-star and is always going to give you some quality at-bats. But they also have the top-end stars that are hitting like stars, and the Rangers had a bit of that in 2023. especially during that postseason run, it was mainly Corey Seager and Adolis Garcia. In the ALCS, it was basically just Adolis Garcia putting the team on his back. They also had Mitch Garver as an elite bat. Marcus Semien during the season was one of those elite bats, but those guys that are, 25, 30, 35 or more percentage better than league average, the best of the best lineups usually have anywhere between 3 or 4 of those guys. And right now you can count on Corey Seager being one of those guys. Marcus Semien might bounce back to being around that level. Joc Pederson is probably going to be around that level. Maybe Wyatt Langford takes that step and gets there. But if Adolis Garcia also gets there, and you have 4 or 5 guys that are in that, 125 OPS plus, 130 OPS plus kind of a range, like Adolis Garcia most definitely can be. He's got that potential for sure. And if he's putting up and aiming for the stars, swing for the stars, and if aim for the moon, what's the phrase? Aim for the moon, and if you miss, you'll be among the stars. Adolis Garcia is aiming well past the moon. He's aiming for the sun. And I love that about him. He is back to being himself. And even if he doesn't hit 50 home runs, heck, maybe he might hit more than 50 home runs. I mean, who knows with this guy? But I do know that him aiming this high, feeling this good about himself, is nothing but good for the Texas Rangers. Speaking of good news for the Texas Rangers, we got some injury updates and my spring training bingo card. All that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios are one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. They've got all kinds of different versions, well, the two. You want shells? You want no shells? Which is your preference? For me, I love the no shells variety. It's so easy to just grab and go. I don't have to crack open the shells. I don't have to, I'm not a big shell guy, but if you are a shell guy, the satisfying crack of those shells, it is just so satisfying. So get crackin' and get snackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be doing version 2 of my opening day roster projection. Alas, my version 1 was not perfect because I'm pretty darn sure Luke Jackson might end up making that opening day roster. Now, let's talk about some injuries. It is spring training. It would not be a spring training Locked On Rangers podcast if I didn't talk about injuries, because that's just the nature of the beast. But it's good news. Only good news today so far. Robert Garcia, he's back. He is back and pitching and feeling oh so good. The Rangers' left-handed relief pitcher who was acquired in the Nathaniel Lowe trade, who is probably going to play a pretty darn important role in this bullpen, missed a little bit of time with some left forearm nerve irritation, but he pitched again on Tuesday, felt good on Wednesday, and everything is a full go. He is going to pitch again on Friday. There is no remnant of any of those things that he was feeling in his arm. What's the word? I cannot find the word right now. The symptoms? There we go. That was the word that was evading me. But Robert Garcia is feeling as good as new. He is going to face hitters eventually. There's no timeline right now. He is a little bit behind where he was hoping to be at this point in camp, but not in any meaningful way that's going to really derail him being ready for opening day at this point. So good news on Robert Garcia. Everybody else feeling really darn good, including Joc Pederson back in Rangers camp doing some drills at first base because he is not going to be playing the outfield, and he is back and healthy after dealing with a little bit of the flu, not wanting to spread that around. He had been out of camp for the last couple of days. Can't have a flu going around spring training. The flu's already going around, I know DFW, I think it's going around Nashville as well. Bruce Bochy had dealt with a little bit of flu stuff before he came to spring training, so he said, hey, Joc, sit down. Go quarantine in your room. Can't have this thing pass it around to everybody. That is not the thing that should be infectious in spring training. It should just be team spirit. That should be infectious in spring training. So everybody who is projected to make the opening day roster, everybody with a guaranteed contract, is feeling pretty darn good about themselves. No setbacks, no ankle tweaks. No, nothing. Everybody is full on go. First spring training game is tomorrow. That is some wonderful, wonderful news. Now, speaking of that first spring training game, the Rangers' first televised game isn't going to be until March 12th. I believe that is the first televised game for the Texas Rangers this spring training, but there are other televised baseball games if your heart so desires to watch a bunch of spring training, but it could be a little bit cumbersome to figure out what to look for, especially if you're trying to get a casual fan more into this. I'm actually going to be playing this bingo game with my girlfriend, trying to show her, like, okay, this is what spring training is like. So I have a list of, I believe I have 35 different things that you can be putting on your Rangers spring training bingo card, or you could really play this while watching any spring training game. It works a little bit better with a Rangers spring training game, but these are all just the telltale things that are happening during spring training to look out for, that are just, some of them are more actually looking for these things. Some of them are more just spring training quirks. But here are 35 different things. You'll have to fill out your own bingo card. I'm going to try and make a little template for you to be able to fill it out and put what you want in what squares. But yeah, this is my spring training bingo card. Let me know if you like this. Let me know if it's terrible. Either way, I'm sure y'all will have some strong feelings. Now, let's start with the first thing on my bingo card. Broadcaster flubs a phrase and says, hey, it's spring training for us too. That feels like almost a free space. I know that I have done that a lot in my own spring training podcast, just getting back into things. It's such an easy thing. It happens literally all the time. Broadcasters, though, are not podcasting for 3 to 4 to 5 days a week in the off season like I am. I'm sticking around, but sometimes spring training makes my brain fart, because this brain has some farts in it for sure. Now, dogs in the outfield, not in the outfield, in the concourse, on the concourse, dogs coming to spring training games. That feels like a pretty free space. I mean, especially in the Rangers outfield, or in their outfield seats, there's some extra grass out there. There's a lot of picnic blankets out there. Dogs are pretty frequently seen in spring training games. So, maybe a dog getting on the actual outfield grass is a little bit out of it, but in those seats, in the outfield seats, on that little grassy concourse, I feel like we'll see plenty of dogs this spring training. Maybe not every game, but probably at least a few. Now, player you've never heard of gets in the game. This is not a player you didn't know was on your team. This was not, a player that is, signing somewhere new, or that you didn't realize was actually healthy or whatever. This is a guy you've straight up never heard of. And you may think, Bryce, but I know everybody. I know the Rangers' top, 50, 60, 70 prospects. I know everybody in the system. No, you don't. No, you don't. There are a lot of guys that are going to show up that you're like, I don't know who the heck that is. I've literally never heard of this guy. I know it because it happens to me. It happens to Rangers beat writers who are start watching a game and they're like, who the heck is this guy? Whether it's a guy on the Rangers, it happens a lot to guys on the Rangers. It happens even more on the opposing teams of like, I have no idea who in the heck this guy is. You look him up and you're like, is this a real person? Is this a real functioning human being? Or did they just make this person up? Is this an NPC that they just dropped into this baseball game? Because I've literally never heard of this guy. It happens at least probably 2 to 5 times to me every single spring training. Of like, I have no idea who this guy is. I study this Rangers roster all the time. I am literally living and breathing baseball from, Class A, Single A, to the Dominican League, to the Arizona Complex League, and they still get guys in actual big league spring training games who I'm like, dude, I have no idea who the heck you are. So don't feel bad if you have no idea who a player is. It happens to literally everybody, and honestly, I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite spring training things of like, okay, they just completely snuck this guy past me. Love that for them. Good for them. And introduces me to a new person. Now, another on this list is former Ranger on the other team. That could be a former Ranger who was here for 10 years or somebody who you loved watching on the Rangers who just got cut, got placed on waivers and hopped on the other team, or somebody who was with the Rangers a long time ago who's trying to make a comeback who you didn't realize was on the other team, including a guy who, if the Rangers play the Mariners this spring training, you might end up seeing Neftali Feliz, who is a non-roster invitee with the Seattle Mariners, hasn't pitched in the major leagues since 2021. Of course, you knew that he pitched with the Dodgers back in 2021. We all were following the Neftali Feliz saga in 2021. No, we weren't. We were not. But Neftali Feliz has been pitching in, I believe, the Mexican League and the Dominican Winter League. He is looking for a major league comeback. He is still in his early 30s, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly. I mean, gosh, one of the great what-ifs in Rangers baseball is Neftali Feliz, but this is going to happen at least probably every game. Maybe you won't see at least every other game a former Ranger, whether they were in a big leaguer with the Rangers or just in Rangers camp. I feel like this happens quite literally all the time. Got a whole lot more of these different bingo cards, and we're talking about all that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. When the games tip off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action, and if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. We're talking about Adolis Garcia hoping for 50 home runs. That might just lead the major leagues, and talking about major league home run leaderboards, they've got some Rangers picks on there right now. Jake Burger at plus 6,500 to lead Major League Baseball in home runs. That is the second favorite amongst Rangers right now. Corey Seager is the favorite, just ahead of him at plus 5,000. They do not have Adolis Garcia on here, but Wyatt Langford is on here, tied with John Kinsey Noel at plus 18,000 to lead Major League Baseball in home runs. And they've also got Marcus Semien on here with the tied for the worst odds for anybody on here with Francisco Lindor, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and James Wood as well at plus 20,000 to lead the major leagues in home runs. So right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if it's your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. We'll be back on Monday talking about the first Rangers spring training games. We are just a day away. We're almost there, y'all. We almost make it. Now, let's get back into this bingo card. Different spots to get on here. I'm going to run through these a whole lot faster because I think I only got through 5 of the 30 or so that I've got left. Now, let's look at the next one on this list. 3 pitchers used in 1 inning. This will probably happen, especially when guys are more mindful of pitch counts in spring training. There's a 3-batter minimum in Major League Baseball, but you can be a little bit more conservative with those guys, with relievers, especially when you're trying to get a whole bunch of guys in there. 3 pitchers in 1 inning is a very rare thing in the major leagues, but in spring training, not quite as rare. This might be a little bit more of a rare space. But on that kind of same note, a pitcher re-entering game after they've been taken out. In an actual major league game, this is a no-no. This is impossible. You cannot do this. But because spring training doesn't count, it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't count, if that makes sense. You can take guys out if they've thrown too many pitches in an inning and then bring them back into a game. It doesn't happen all the time, but it'll happen at least, 2 to 5 times or so in spring training. That is something that is a fun little quirk in spring training, but something to look out for. The next one on this list is 4 or more defensive substitutions in an inning. This happens a lot, very often. Almost never in a major league game because you just don't have that many guys on your bench to sub out 4 different guys. But this happens literally all the time, especially early on in games. Just basically hockey line changes of just 4 or more guys. Sometimes it's 5, 6. Sometimes it's the entire team. That's a little bit more rare, but 4+ defensive subs in an inning happens all the time. Next one on this list, player you recognize but had no idea was in the camp of that team hops into a game. This happens quite frequently. Keep your eye out for Joey Gallo in a White Sox game. I'm actually not sure if the White Sox are in the Cactus League or if they are in the Grapefruit League. But Joey Gallo will be one of those you're like, I didn't realize he was there. Unless you're me and you follow everything that happens with Joey Gallo very, very intensely. Next one, the Arizona Chop or the Baltimore Chop. If you don't know what the Baltimore Chop is, don't worry. It's a very, very niche thing. But in Baltimore, they had this signature thing where the groundskeeper would make the dirt and the area right in front of home plate very, very hard so players could hit the ball right into the dirt and it would just bounce up and over the infield. That's a little bit how the dirt fields are, or just the fields in general are, at least in Surprise, but really kind of a lot of the Arizona, spring training league. There's a lot of those. So an infield single that, bounces right in front of home plate but hops over the infield, put that on your bingo card. Home runs that hit the car in the parking lot. This doesn't happen in Major League games almost ever because the stadiums are too big, but these stadiums are not nearly that big. The parking lots are usually, not too far removed from the field, so this happens quite frequently. Not every game, not every home run, but it happens quite a bit. This next one, you might as well put this one in the middle as a free space. As someone says on the broadcast that they are in the best shape of their life. This happens every spring training. Honestly, we've seen it less and less because it is just such an obvious cliche of every single guy is in the best shape of their life. Me, I'm in spring training. I'm in the best shape of my life. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not in high school, swimming 3 miles a day. I'm 30. I'm not in the best shape of my life, and that's fine. Some of these guys come into camp and are just so adamant about letting you know how much they're in the best shape of their life, and that's going to lead to everything being, everything that was bad last year, it's gone. I'm in the best shape of my life, so none of that can happen again. Now, next one on this list is more than 9 pitchers used in a game. This is a rarity, but you'll see this a decent amount. Usually, in an average Major League game, there's 3 to 5 pitchers used in a game. In an average spring training game, I'd say that's 6 to 8. If you get 9 plus, more than a pitcher per inning, it's a delight. It's a very oftenly seen thing. So you can put this more in one of those middle spaces for that. Next one on this list, game ends in a tie. Doesn't happen in Major League Baseball. Happens all the time in spring training. Managers are like, you good? You done with this game? Yeah, I'm done with this game. I don't need anything else out of it. Not having to use more pitchers than you needed to. Or sometimes they're like, hey, let's go one extra inning and see how this plays out. But it happens quite frequently, at least, for every team, I'd say they with at least 1 or 2 ties in spring training. But most of the time, managers will look at each other and say, you good? I'm good. Let's go grab a beer. We're done for the day. And that happens a lot in spring training. Next one on this list, there we go. Fan falls asleep in a crowd shot. That happens a lot. It happens at least, I'd say, once a week in these spring training games. Guys, just the game drags on. There's a whole bunch of minor leaguers in there that the broadcast doesn't know what to do. They start showing some crowd shots, and they get a little sleepy in the afternoon. Just a warm little cat nap. I mean, Arizona is real nice this time of year, and so someone just dozes off, especially on that outfield grass, the outfield seats concourse where there's grass. I mean, that's prime napping territory. Especially get a picnic blanket out there. You got your dog curled up next to you. You got to look out, though. You could get hit by a home run, and that would not be a pleasant way to wake up from a nap, for sure. Next one on this list is the broadcast doesn't know who an opposing player is. Like I said, it happens all the time for people watching baseball, and it happens quite a bit even for the professionals who cover baseball. Next one on this list, we're going to have to run through these even faster. Player without a name or number on the jersey enters the game. This will happen a couple of different times, not all the time, but you'll probably see it at least once during spring training. Next one, broadcaster talks while they're coming back from commercial, not realizing that they're on the air. This will happen a decent amount. Usually they don't say anything too embarrassing, but getting back into those breaks, getting back into the rhythm, that happens a lot. Player with a number higher than 60 enters the game, that's almost a free space. You might as well go ahead and put that in there. They get a lot of different numbers in spring training. Sometimes they'll even double up on numbers. So a player with a number higher than 60 in a regular game, not often, but in a spring training game, almost a guarantee. Next one on this list, someone references Wyatt Langford's insane spring training numbers from last year, saying, oh, look at how good a spring he had, and it didn't necessarily matter, just kind of in a reference to, spring training numbers not mattering all that much. Next one, pitcher throws a new pitch that they have not thrown before. Last year, we saw it with Dane Dunning's forkball. We really only saw that a couple of times. Maybe this is not the best one to put on this list because I haven't seen anybody trying out a new pitch. Maybe Dane Dunning will, have like a splinker or a spitball or something that he's working on. He's got so many pitches. Maybe we'll end up seeing that. Next one on this list, pitcher fails to cover first base. This is the first thing that they work on when they get their pitchers and catch reporting, covering first base on a grounder to the right side, and those pitchers will get chewed out if they don't do that. Next on this list, two plan, thrown out on the bases like a nincompoop. Just a general base running error. Next one, someone brings up Josh Young's bad luck with spring training injuries. That's almost a guarantee to happen if Josh Young is in a game. He has had some really, really bad luck. Hopefully that he doesn't have that bad luck. Next one, this is probably just going to be in a game against Oakland, but a broadcaster accidentally calls them the Oakland A's, which they are no longer. They're not the Sacramento A's. They are just the Athletics. I hate it. It sucks. Next one on this list, new player's name is pronounced wrong. Pretty self-explanatory. Next one, free agent signs or a trade is announced during the game. There's still quite a few free agents. Maybe some big move will be announced during a game. I don't know how often this one's going to happen, but I bet it'll happen at least once if you watch enough spring training games. Next one on this list, pitcher throws a bullpen after the game, or actually in the middle of the game because they didn't get enough pitches in during their outing. This will happen quite a bit, more often than the pitcher going back into the game. It's just they're going to finish up however many pitches they're supposed to throw on the side, so they just go and get those in the bullpen after that. Next one, the broadcast references the Rays playing at Steinbrenner Field, the Yankees spring training facility. That one will probably happen more often if you're watching, definitely if you're watching a Yankees spring training game, they'll probably say, hey, this is where the Rays are going to play this year. It'll probably happen. Next one on this list, World Series hangover is mentioned. Pretty self-explanatory. Probably going to happen. I don't know if every broadcast, but I bet a decent chunk of them. And in that same vein, the next one on this list is Bruce Bochy's every other year World Series winning pattern. The every other year in San Francisco, 2010, 2012, 2014. Rangers won it in 2023, missed the postseason in 2024. That was the pattern with Bruce Bochy in San Francisco. So if the Rangers just win it all this year, he will continue that pattern, hopefully stay for another 2 years, win another World Series after that. That would be very, very nice. Next one on this list, also pretty self-explanatory, a Jake Burger pun. If Jake Burger does anything and they reference anything that you put on a burger, just mark that one down. If he's in the game, I feel like it's just too tempting to not do it. I'm already in my head about what kinds of silly Jake Burger photoshops I'm going to do now that Kirby Yates is gone and I can't do more Kirby photoshops. Very disappointed about that. But Jake Burger puns are going to be a wellspring this year for the broadcast and for me as well. Next one on this list, the next to last one, Jacob deGrom is called, quote, the best pitcher on earth, on the planet, also works when healthy. It has to have that caveat. It has to stay the best on the planet, on the earth, in the league, whatever, when healthy. If they're talking about Jacob deGrom, that's almost a guarantee. And the last one on this list, Nathan Eovaldi's leadership is mentioned, talking about how good a mentor he is and how that's a big reason why the Rangers brought him back. Is not just he's a really good pitcher, but he's also, such a mentor, such a leader in the clubhouse. That feels like a surefire thing. If they bring up Nathan Eovaldi, if they bring up what the Rangers did this winter, which they will, it's spring training, that feels like a surefire, guaranteed one. Now that's going to do it for this bingo card. 35 spots on there. If you decide to play this and make your own bingo card, let me know how it goes. If you thought it was great, let me know. If you thought it sucked, maybe be nice about it when you let me know. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy spring training baseball.